Hi, everybody. Welcome to our workshop meeting. We just came out of executive session, so we've already said the pledge. So I'm just going to welcome all of you and thank you for coming. We have a few presentations this evening. First off, we're going to be starting with our Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES search consultants. Will give us a brief lowdown of the process for our new superintendent search. We have a presentation by Miss Megan Shields, our webmaster, and an update on the new upcoming website, as well as a web presentation by ClearGov. So, full-packed meeting. Thank you all for coming, and at this time I'll turn it over to Dr. Bowers.
Okay, so we invite the search consultants up first? Would you like to do that?
Do you want to go through your brief comments, and then we'll...
Okay, however we want to do it, that's great.
We'll just do all the...
Okay, so for my superintendent support, the first agenda item is a meeting that we'll have in December with John D'Angelo. It'll occur on the 19th of December. Mr. D'Angelo will be coming in. He is our architect, and he's going to be working with us on the potential of the upcoming bond referendum. He is going to be talking about a number of things related to the things that we will be discussing with our bond referendum, one of which is another company coming in to do an assessment of the system, our heating system, and the delivery part of our heating system, and learn a little bit more about what we need to do in order to make our system one that's going to last for a long time. So that meeting, he will be here on the 19th of December, and we look forward to that. Yesterday, we had a brunch for all of the volunteers that built our beautiful new concession stand. We also had a ribbon cutting ceremony. The brunch wasn't quite as extensive as we hoped it would have been because we didn't have power. So our food service director did her magic and was able to get a very nice brunch without electricity put together. And then we shared some fun time with all the volunteers, and then we went and had our ribbon cutting ceremony, and it was so windy that we couldn't tie the ribbon for the ribbon cutting ceremony. So our prior superintendent, Mark Vellante, was here, so he held one part of the ribbon, I held the other part of the ribbon, and Dan Hughes was the one that cut it. So we say thank you once again to all the volunteers and the companies that were a part of that. It was a huge, huge effort, and people dedicated their time and energy, and we're very appreciative of that, so thank you for that. On the 1st of December at 7 p.m. and the 2nd of December, again at 7 p.m., our high school play will be taking part. And this year it's the Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. So it's one that I don't know, but please come and join us once again the 1st and the 2nd of December. And I would like to introduce you to somebody new to our Haldane family. In the back, we are introducing Matt Shelters, who is our new SRO. And Deputy Shelters began with the Haldane school community today, and he's still smiling, so that's a good thing. So welcome. We're very glad to have you.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so at this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. James Ryan, Dr. Lynn Allen, and Mr. John McCarthy, and they'll be doing our presentation on walking us through the process of the superintendent search.
Terrific. Good evening. And we are here to provide an overview, and we provided the board and superintendent.
It's not on.
Terrific. You say how we have a reading there. Okay. Purpose for our visit here this evening is to provide you with an overview of the search process for the superintendent of schools, and we've provided you with an information packet. So if you'd follow along, we also have a PowerPoint for those in the community that happen to be watching. It's our pleasure to work with you in this really important function of the Board of Education. In fact, in New York State Education Law Statute, it's the duty of the Board of Education to appoint a superintendent of schools and to enter into a contract with that individual. And we're really focused on working with you to make this happen. We're very cognizant of the mission of the Haldane District, and as we begin our process and working with you, we're going to ensure you that we will find an individual for you that will be a great match for you as it pertains to the mission, the activities, the culture of the district and this community. We're also looking to ensure a process for the board that provides transparency to the community, encourages community participation, and also demonstrates alignment between the Board of Education and community stakeholders. So as you see us walk through the various steps involved in this, our goal is to ensure those three: transparency, participation, and really congruence between the board and community. We look at 5 essential steps in the search process, and each of these are pretty involved. So it appears as if they would be straightforward and not take too much time, but they are very deliberate in the way we handle them, and we are going to walk you through them here this evening. The announcement of the position, the steps we take to screen candidates, our presentation to the Board of Education of semifinalists that we believe are worthy of your consideration, how the board will conduct its interviews and the process in which they will involve community, and ultimately the appointment of the new superintendent of schools. The announcement of position, wait for those to come up. One of the things I know we've talked about already, and I know the board president has prepared a letter to share with the community that announces the board's intent to seek a superintendent of schools and go through a process that is involved, as we'll discuss this evening. We'll also be looking to conduct stakeholder meetings, which will allow a development of a candidate profile and ultimately allow us to do postings, brochure, advertisement. I want to introduce now our assistant superintendents for Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES, Dr. Lynn Allen and Mr. John McCarthy. They're going to talk a little bit about those stakeholder meetings and some of the steps we take to ensure the development of a quality candidate profile in this process.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the stakeholder meetings, or sometimes as we call them, the focus group meetings. And as Laura outlined in her letter that she drafted today for the community, we have both focus groups that will involve your staff, your students, and community. We have 2 focus groups. One will take place with the staff, the faculty, and the students at one point during the week of December 4th. More information and details will follow there. The one for the community, and that would include community members, parents, members of the business and industry, will take place on December 11th. There's a flyer in your folders which you can pull out and see, and that will be distributed widely. What's very important to the Board of Education here in our meetings with them thus far is that all stakeholders have the opportunity to participate in this process, and they can do that through the focus groups. We welcome anyone in. We'll be sure that everybody knows when they are. And the other part of this stakeholder process is to do an online survey. An online survey will be posted onto the website, and there will be a survey for community members. There will also be a separate survey for the Board of Education. And that survey, or those surveys, I should say, will remain on the website until December 18th. So as you can see, there are many different ways that people can participate. Their voices can be heard. And in the focus group, stakeholder meetings, as we call them also, in the online survey, we use two basic questions. The first is, what are the qualities and characteristics that you are looking for in your next superintendent? And the second is, what are the challenges and opportunities that you think are facing the district moving forward? So those are, again, the same 2 questions that we ask repeatedly over and over again, and that can be done in person or it can be done online. With both of those opportunities, we will cast a very broad net and hopefully have some very good detailed information for the board to consider as they move forward to next develop a candidate profile. So with the feedback from the community and all of the stakeholders, the board again will take that information, they will distill it down, they will develop the profile. The profile will then feed the posting, the ad, the advertisement, brochures, and anything that's related to information that we would then push out, and that would become your criteria for your next superintendent. And it kind of flows that way. Okay. And then next part of the process is the candidate screening. Let's just get that up for you. So as we as search consultants get the information as people are applying, we would of course review all of those submitted materials. We would conduct on those who we think meet the criteria, again, that's been developed by the community and that the board has approved, and we would begin to do preliminary review of references, and we'd bring those individuals in on a rolling basis. We wouldn't wait until the application closes. As we see someone who has merit, matches the criteria, we bring them in, so we do these rolling interviews, and then the preliminary references would couple with that. When we are finished with all of the screenings, once the application closes, we've seen all of those that we think are a good match, we try to winnow then that group down to a slate of semifinalists. Typically, we try to get that down to about 6 to 8 candidates that we present to the Board of Education. And we go into great detail with them, just an overview of how many people applied, a kind of breakdown of the demographics and so on. And then we go through and we identify the highlights with background, resume, and other supporting documents so that we can give them a very good idea of our slate of candidates and why we're bringing them forward. Okay, and the next phase, next part of the process is the initial board interviews. So as I said, we bring the slate of 6 to 8, then it's really up to the board at that point to develop some initial interview questions, because then those that they select from that semi-finalist slate, could be all 6 to 8 of them, could be less, depending on what the board would like to do. They have questions that they're going to develop. Of course, as search consultants, we would help them as much as possible with that process. We're with them every step of the way so that we're supporting them. And then they would go ahead and they would interview the semifinalists. And you can see there's a couple of variations as to how they might do that. And then from there, they're going to select, if possible, this is our recommendation, to winnow that further down into 3 finalists. Okay? So we go from that slate of 6 to 8, board interviews, they winnow it down to 3. And then I'm going to just pass now to John McCarthy to tell you about the final steps in the interview process.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you again for allowing us to do this search for you. It's a wonderful opportunity. So you've narrowed it down to 3, and at this point, we've done some initial reference checking, but then we're going to do a full reference check. And as you can see up in there, not only are we going to be doing educational, we're going to be doing criminal and financial checks. We do have a firm that we use that does a pretty extensive background check on each of the 3 finalist candidates. Then the board is going to be selecting a confidential interview committee made up of the similar stakeholders that are going to our different meetings, so you should probably have some representation from the community, from the staff, from the administration. And then what we're going to do is over a series of 3 days, we're going to be conducting interviews. So if you volunteer to be on that interview committee, number one, you have to be ready to make sure you're confidential, but also do it over 3 days. So you have to commit to all 3 days. And what basically happens is the committee will interview the candidate. After that interview is over, we're going to speak and debrief the committee on what they think are the positives of the candidate, what are some of the concerns of the candidates, and any follow-up questions that they may have for the board to ask the candidate as well. So if a candidate, for example, didn't go into enough detail during the interview process about curriculum, we would ask the board then to ask a question, more in-depth question about curriculum. So after we debrief with the committee, we will then meet with the board that same day, provide the feedback to the board, and then the board will interview that candidate for a second time on that same evening as the committee interview. And we'll do that over 3 days. Sometimes we condense it down to 2 days, or sometimes we do it on a Saturday. But basically the format is committee interview, feedback, provide the board with the feedback, re-interview that candidate the same day. After the board does that, and it's a monumental task, then we expect them to, at that point in time, select the finalist. After they select the final candidate, we strongly recommend that the board go out and do a site visit with the candidates in the district they're currently from. So then, Once you've done the site visit, you feel very comfortable with the candidate, you want to offer initial, just tell them that they're going to be offered the job. And then you're going to start working on the contract negotiations with that particular candidate. Now, what we would tell you is it's very important that you start the process with the contract now with your attorney. So you want to look at the current contract of the superintendent, what things in there work, what things in there you'd like to change. And that's important because you don't want to wait till the last minute to start doing that, because that could drag the process along. So the quicker you start that process, you'll have something to put in front of your finalists right at the end there. And then what we're asking is that, again, that at a regular board meeting, you'd have a formal appointment of the candidate, and then obviously the signing of the contract. All right?
Thank you, John. Thank you, Lynn. What I'd like to do now is bring your attention or draw your attention to the timeline or the recommended timeline that we have in your packet. Essentially, I want to point out a few items that are significant, and they kind of align with the topics that were just covered. We're looking to do this information gathering, this idea of stakeholder meetings, as was mentioned, during the week of December 4th, as well as a community and parent in the evening of December 11. This will allow us to get that candidate profile. Our goal is to get materials in the way of a brochure, a letter that goes out to the region, to the state, and beyond, many national contacts as well, by the end of the calendar year. So prior to the holiday break, we're looking to have the materials together that would allow us to have the advertisement/posting that would allow us to begin to encourage candidates to apply. From that time until February 2nd, which is a Friday about 5 or 6 weeks out, we will have an open time for candidates to apply to us. As was mentioned, as Lynn mentioned previously, we do a rolling interview so that as candidates are coming in and we take a look at people who are applying at that time, we bring them to us so they're not stockpiled and we have a grand activity coming around February 2nd. We will have seen many people prior to the closing, but we will also plan to see a handful of candidates, more likely than not, following that February 2nd closing period. Again, the timeline somewhat speaks for itself, so I won't belabor it, but we then talk about the interview dates, the semifinalists and such, all with the idea of giving you the opportunity to have an appointment by April. So if you follow along on the timetable, it will allow us to identify the steps and allow you to identify a superintendent that you can bring to the public in a public announcement in April. I also want to talk a little bit about the confidential committee and just take a moment on that topic. I know it's important to have stakeholder involvement, and we are doing that on the front end in terms of the sessions that we're running in December. We are also going to have a committee of stakeholders. A stakeholder is a representative member of a recognized group within the school district. There are many community members, residents who would say, hey, I want to be involved in this process. It's the role and responsibility of the Board of Education to hire and to enter into contract with the superintendent of schools. That board can use whatever support they need in the way of advice, advisory, information coming from the community at large in whatever form they take. We have a pretty good track record in developing that through online surveys and the stakeholder sessions that we run, and the identification of stakeholder groups that we talk about with the board and ultimately identify that confidential committee that will do its work in March. So I just want to prepare everyone that it's not an open committee that people will say, well, I'd like to participate. We will work with you to contact the representative stakeholder groups within the community and ask them to provide a representative. So if you have an administrators association, a teachers association, PTA, SEPTA, booster clubs, anything you have that's a representative group, it would make sense to have a representative from those groups that would allow ultimately for them to provide you stakeholder input. That pretty much covers the work we've done up to now. Some of this is already known to the board. The opportunity to share this tonight and also share it with the public, I think, is a great idea on your part, and we're again happy to work with you on this.
Great, Thank you so much for coming and explaining this process. One clarification that I was looking for was for the student and staff forums. Those are done separately, or they're not combined?
No, they're not combined.
Okay.
We might look to try to combine the day so that
Right.
our staff isn't coming here more than once or twice. But if we can schedule a time where we can get a core group of upper-class students to sit with Dr. Allen and Mr. McCarthy, as well as the staff who would have the opportunity, we'd identify a time during that week of December 4th. The third session would be that evening session, which is open to anyone. It's parents, it's community, but it's also anyone else who missed perhaps the earlier sessions, whether they be student or staff.
Great. Thank you for that clarification, because I know we were trying to arrange rooms, and so definitely two separate. Thank you.
Will Julia be our contact in terms of trying to identify time for the week of the 4th and setting that up, or how would you recommend that
I can
work?
be, yeah. I'm going to be working on it, I guess, tomorrow. So, yeah. But I think a lot of people will be gone, so we may not.
Yeah.
Have
Okay.
specifics on
Well, it's also important because we need to identify and check John and Lynn's schedule and see
Right.
what their
Right.
what their availability is. But we'll do what we can to set it up and make it
Okay.
work.
Question
Evan?
on the community committee.
Mm-hmm.
Two questions. One, do you ever have a student on that committee? And also, can you talk about what about groups, stakeholder groups that are not a school-related group, like PTA, booster? These are all people from the school. So what about the stakeholder group of community members that are not directly involved with the school?
I'll give you a couple examples on that, and it's something that we provide you with the opportunity to give us, and then we could help you reach out to them. For example, a few of the communities where we are doing searches have very active service clubs, service organizations like Rotary or Lions. It wouldn't be uncommon for a representative from a very active community group to be involved in the process. But again, I'm serving that up now, so you give thought to that. You don't want to exclude anyone, especially an active group
But
within
is
the
that a common
community.
thing? Do you see that there's at least one
Yes.
group
Yeah.
from a non-school
Yes.
group?
Mhm.
Okay. And student? Is there a student that sits on these? A student representative?
It has happened, yeah. It hasn't happened of late, but it has happened, and we would not oppose that if that's something that the board is looking to do.
Great, thanks. Jen, do you have any questions?
I know I'm over here. I have a great view of the water bottle, so I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Follow the presentation auditorily, but I just wanted to. I wanted to say that I'm really excited to work with BOCES. I'm really impressed by the work you've done so far, and I think we're really lucky to work with you. And I know that you do a great job for all the schools that you serve, but I do think it's worth sharing with the public that, the superintendent, Dr. Ryan, is a Cold Spring resident, and he's a parent of a Haldane graduate. So to me, that makes us in extra good hands.
You've done your homework. Well, that's very nice of you to say, and you're absolutely right. I've lived on Main Street in Cold Spring for 32 years, and I do have a son who's graduated from the school, had an excellent experience here, and I'm really confident that John, Lynn, and myself can really do a great job for you.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Have a good.
Great holiday.
Thank you. Same to you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thanks. I think we're going to go with Megan. I-
Do you think that, can I
time plugged in, just so she can see the presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, there was only about 20, I only had
Oh,
20%
30%.
left.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you see the screen?
Do you need Diana to move, or are you okay?
I don't mind staring at Diana.
Do you want, can you see behind me, or am I right in your way?
You're in my way, but I can see around you.
So maybe you just scoot back a teeny bit more. It's very close quarters here.
It's okay, I can activate too.
How's that? Better?
Perfect.
Of course, I got it to work for Tony. And,
Here it is.
there you go. No, that's not me. Is that you?
It isn't?
Let's see. No.
You might have to turn on screen mirroring, right?
Extended
yes, I might.
screen.
You're right. Let me see.
Is that you
Oh,
in
it's
the
definitely
corner
you.
there?
It's definitely you, I just saw the.
Yeah, it is. I think you might be right about the screen mirroring, but now it's not giving me my.
I think it's doing an extended screen
No.
sometime right now.
Technology.
Do you know, is that a Chromebook?
It is, yeah. It's it's right here, right?
Some settings.
Yeah.
And then about 3/4 of the way down, you should see displays.
Yeah.
And click on that giant.
Yeah.
D,
What was it, this?
D whatever.
Screen
There
mirror.
you go.
There we go. Okay. Thank you, Tony. All right. Sorry about that.
I don't know.
Okay. So, yep. Oh, microphone. Sorry about that. Okay.
Okay. So we are in the midst of reinventing the Haldane website, which I think for a long time it's served a purpose, but it's needed a lot of love. So we are working with an outside web developer called Final Site. They're located in Connecticut. They are specialists in K through 12 public and private school web design. So we did go through a process of talking with 3 or 4 different vendors, and we decided to go with Final Site. It's been a great experience so far. We had sort of our official kickoff on September 25th, and after that we went through what they call a discovery phase. So we worked through our existing Haldane branding, just a time for them to really get to know us, the personality of our district. We talked to them about our website objectives, and we worked through what would be the site maps for the district as a whole, and then the individual schools within the district. So once that was finalized, we've moved on to website design and content development. The way that Final Site sort of described it to us is we're in a process now where we sort of have 2 trains working in parallel. So Final Site is working on the creative development, which I'm going to share with you and sort of show you where we are at this point. And then at the same time, we're working on our content. So as we develop content for the new site, it's being loaded into sort of a development platform that looks like a very bare bones website. There's nothing pretty about the place that we're working right now. And ultimately, those 2 things will come back together, and our development site will start to look like what our website will ultimately look like. So I just thought we would take a few minutes to share what we as a district came up with as our objectives for the new site. From a content standpoint, we see really the number 1 priority as being able to give families and community members, students, parents, staff members, quick access to the most important information that is as current as possible. Whether that's about the district as a whole, whether that's the calendars that pertain to the various schools and our athletics, and whatever news may be going on in each of our schools. We want to have a good platform for celebrating all the great things that happen at Haldane, and then really a place where we can highlight our academics, the different enrichment programs here, and the opportunities for the students. From a design standpoint, we want easy navigation. We want people to be able to come to the site and quickly figure out where they want to be and where the information that they're looking for is located. And we want a clean and consistent face to the parents and to the community. We want to take advantage of our beautiful landscape and the history of our campus. And then we've talked a lot about ADA compliance as well. And that's something that Final Site has a lot of experience with, and they can really help us in that vein. Any questions about this part of it? Okay. Okay.
Actually, I didn't
Yeah.
make sure, I mean, people should know, but for people viewing ADA, American with Disabilities Act, right, to make sure
Right.
that it's
Yes. And there's a lot of different guidelines and tips and suggestions for the ways that we can post content to our site. Some of it has to do with the usability of documents or videos. Some of it actually has to do with creative and the colors that we choose to use and various things. Okay, so we are in the creative development phase. And at this point, what I'm going to show you are really static designs. So this isn't a live portion of the website yet. These are static designs that we're working through with Final Site. So this is a look at where we stand with the homepage for the district. And the primary navigation is across the top. From the homepage of the district, you would be able to look at more information about the district, a section, and this is sort of a look at what the drop-down might look like. So these would be the various categories within the district section of the site. And then it just gives us an opportunity to use another photograph, highlight a little bit of information. But these would be our primary areas of the site. This top portion here I'll just mention is kind of like a quick tools section where you could get to the calendar very quickly. There's going to be a lot of ways to get to the calendar. But you get to the calendar very quickly, and then this tools drop down would take you to 3 sections of the site that would be sort of quick access, whether you're a student looking for something, and it might be links to Power School, or for students it might give them links to Naviance for college planning, just some of the resources that they need to get their hands on quickly. I'll mention too, all the photographs that are in these designs are placeholders at this point in time. But our homepage would offer a slider through a series of photographs. And then just below that, you would have access to each of our 3 schools. And this gives us an opportunity to highlight whatever we'd like on the homepage. Just below that, we would have a news section with or without photography that could highlight upcoming events or events that have just taken place, like our ribbon cutting, for example. That could be a piece of news that we would highlight on our homepage. And then just below that, access to the calendar again in a way that would highlight the 3 upcoming events. This would also be a slider, so you could click through or you could go directly to the calendar. So one of the things that we worked through and we talked with Final Site about is, from a branding standpoint, how we want to differentiate between our district and our individual schools. And we decided really from an identity standpoint, we're really all about blue and white here at Haldane, so we decided to stick with the same color scheme throughout all sections of the site, but then use the naming at the top and photography and other elements to differentiate between the schools. So this is an example of what it would look like when you come to the elementary school homepage, the information that you would be able to access from the homepage. And then in a similar design, instead of taking you to the 3 schools, this area would allow us to highlight different sections of the elementary portion of the website. Again, news, but this news would pertain just to the elementary school. And again, the calendar. So I think we've kind of heard a lot from parents and community members that being able to get to the calendar is very important. We're trying to make that as easy as possible. I'll just kind of quickly go through each of these. The middle school, again, what you're looking at are the home pages for each of our 3 schools that will mirror the design of the district homepage. So similar format. And then the same for the high school. And I'll just mention, from a content standpoint, besides the calendars, some of the things that we're looking and doing is really building out the information about each of our schools. I think that's an area where we're lacking right now. We don't really spend a lot of time on the website talking about our enrichment programs and our clubs and our student government in each of the 3 schools. So we're really, from a content place, trying to look at building out and kind of rounding out the way that we talk about the school. Same for the guidance department in the high school, being able to really give much more expanded online access to the types of things that are happening in the guidance department every day, putting some of that information more front and center on the website. We're also doing, and I think it was maybe Jen or somebody on the board I know had suggested that we look at doing some information about the history of Haldane. So we're going to be building out a section on history and traditions, and actually the History Club in the high school is helping us develop content for that section of the site, which is really cool. Athletics, we're going to be building out the athletics section a lot. Final Site has some really kind of cool modules for being able to highlight the various teams, and there will even be a way that you can sign up for a particular team, almost, if your child's involved in softball and you want to follow the softball team, we can give the coaches the ability to post, real-time scores, or someone on the sidelines posting real-time scores, and then you as a follower of that team can get those alerts. The same will be true of the calendars. You'll be able to, as a parent, customize your view of the calendar. So if you have a student in middle school and high school, then you can set your calendar settings so that those are the events that you see when you first come to the calendar. Staff, we're working on building out staff bios, and we're going to have photography, photographs of each of the staff members and faculty members. And that's it from a creative standpoint. This sheet is what Final Site calls a style guide. So this just gives examples of some of the design elements that we would then have access to as we build out the custom content within our pages.
Megan, did you want to talk a little bit about how the plan is to roll out the website and potentially have a sort of pilot program?
Yep. We've talked about this some as a board, and I've also talked with Final Site about it. This site production timing on here is really what I talked about, those 2 trains coming back together. So we're still going to be very much in development, but we're going to be getting a lot closer to what looks like our website. In February, we should be at a point where we can begin that beta testing. And what Final Site has recommended is that we put together a partner panel or a group of stakeholders, or invite key groups of staff members, students, and the other organizations that are very involved in Haldane, and let them work through a testing period of however long we feel comfortable with. And just really ask them to kind of live with the site and play with it and experience the different things that will be in it. From a functionality standpoint, it isn't going to be terribly complex. You know, we're not an e-commerce site, and there's not going to be a lot of tricky functionality, but it will probably be more just about the ease of finding information and being able to quickly get where they want to get. And from that point, we launch. And you know, the beauty of a website is that we're not printing a brochure. It's going to be a living and breathing beast, and I'm sure we will have feedback, and we will welcome feedback forevermore, and it gives us the chance to keep expanding and adding and changing.
Any other questions? Jen?
No, you've answered my questions. I think it looks good. I know you guys have done a lot of work, and I know you have a lot more work to do. So I know that this is just, I guess we'll hear back, right?
Yes.
So are we thinking like, I know you said the site launches in February for people to start testing it. Is that the next time that we as a board anticipate kind of chatting about this again?
I would think probably more like January, because that's really when all of the behind the scenes content work will come together with the creative. So that's when it's going to start to look like a living, breathing website. So I think that's a good point for us to relook at things and see how we feel about organization and the way that information's being displayed.
Cecilia, you had a question.
I just have a question if you have any idea when you're going to put the videos on a special tab or still deal with Word docs.
We're still going to use board docs. And I think, you know, the way that we have it designed now within the Board of Ed section of the website, you'll be able to get directly to board docs. So you would still be able to access the minutes and the videos in a similar way.
Do you think it might be easier to put some type of link on the front to sort of, people don't know to go through board docs to get to the video?
On the homepage?
Yeah.
Yes, I think I envision that's something we would still highlight on the homepage like we do now.
Any other questions? Well, thank you for all your hard work. Okay, so now, Dr. Show, I believe you're assisting with the cleargov.com presentation? Do you think the audio is going to work?
I don't know.
All right, we'll try it.
I think the person who's presenting it said that we should call in.
Okay.
Oh,
It's a multimedia meeting.
Extremely.
I can use my cell phone. Do we have a number?
If you don't mind, yeah. It's 781 666 2350. And then there's an ID number once you dial it.
Okay.
Welcome to Join Me. Please enter your conference ID and press the pound key.
853 072 970.
You will now be placed into the conference.
You've done this before, Peggy.
A few times.
Hi, this is Peggy Clements from the Haldane Board of Ed. We're getting you set up on the screen right now for the presentation.
Awesome.
Great.
This is Brenda Loopers.
That's correct.
Yes.
Right. Do you want her to go ahead and start introducing herself?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yep.
Can you hear that?
Can you hear that?
Yeah, I can hear that.
Yep, I can.
All right.
So, hi, thanks for joining the call. I work for ClearGov, which is a company that has created a platform for transparency. We've grabbed all the data for various state school districts and municipalities. We grabbed the New York data. We get it from the State Controller's Office for your financial numbers and the New York State Education Department for the other information that we get. And we've been around about 2 years now, and we've really built out our school platform. So I work here. We're a startup, so there's 11 of us now. So I work in the finance department, and I'm helping with the client success, which is we're helping Dr. Bowers learn about the product, add new features as she finds them. We're missing stuff, so we appreciate her help. So basically, we have a front-facing portal, which is anyone in the community can see, and we also have the back office. And in the back office, you'll see different things that you can do. But I'll just show you the rough. You can pick your years. As the information from the NYSED gets released, we grab that and aggregate it and throw it into our database. And we have several panels, and our panels are basically the district snapshots and demographics, your financial overview. We have the capital outlay, and then we have performance. So as we dig into different pieces of this, you can get more information on your students, enrollment by grade, other, different ways we look at students, ways you might want to analyze what's going on in your population. And here we have interactive charts. So if you wanted to take out all students, as you can see, it changes what happens. They're all interactive graphs. You can add commentary. So in a lot of instances, and I believe New York State changed the way they tested, so you'll see different drops. And this would you might want to explain if there was an explanation. Then you could just add a comment here, and anywhere anyone looked in this in your community, they'd actually have a little bit of information on what happened that would cause an increase or a decrease. But we track student diversity for you, and again, this is all public data, completely. We can drop out, drop back in if we need to. So there's different information, and as we go back, you can always come back up here. So we can look at students, we can look at your teachers, find out what their degrees are. From a financial overview, you can look at what you're spending your money on. And here's graphs where, a dip or something you might want to explain. And as you go through, you can find many places to keep drilling to get more information. And if you look at this chart, like we can look at instruction, view and analysis, and now it's going to show you how you compare. So we've set up a peer group for all of our schools. And it's based on an algorithm, and it's basically your number of students. So we try to pick someone in your same size, your combined wealth ratio, and your distance. So as your community is looking through this, seeing how you guys are doing compared to, schools around you or someone they know, here's, the demographics of how we picked those schools. Now, I've also gone and created a custom peer group for you. And this is a BOCES that you guys are in. So I just grabbed that because I figured it would at least, they put you in it, so I created this for you. So you can start to see how you do against the other schools in your BOCES. So anytime you can drill down and see, see full information, you can just keep drilling down so we can stay in education and just drill into any one of these buckets that you're spending. So as you report it to the state is how we're going to show it. So we have your school spending, we have your revenue, where's your money coming from, your debt, and again, you can look into more performance metrics. So if your community wants to know how you guys are doing, your graduation analysis, you can, again, pop in, pop out information because it will change the plotting of your numbers, post-graduation plans, your scores for all students, or you can, again, drill down and see how your girls are doing compared to the boys. And again, we've tried to build in enough information so that you guys can take a look at stuff and compare and make data-based decisions. So again, you'll see drop down So you can see how your 8th graders are doing, how the 5th graders are doing, and again, just all the information that we can grab, we have aggregated for your community. So this is how your public would use your portal, just to see what's going on, what your school's doing. On the back side of it, we have this administration panel, and we won't go into all of them, but I'll pick a few of them. So you can have custom peer groups. Anyone who's available to the public, you can set it as a default. And if you're an admin, you get to see all of them anyway. That's why you could see it on the public facing, because I'm an admin. And as long as it's set available to the public, you can set it as a default. If you wanted to create a new peer group, you were doing something, a special, you were looking into some spending or some revenues, you can just go and grab, you can type in, whatever you need to, create a peer group, give it a name, give it a description. Your description, if you made it to the public, would show out on the portal so that they would understand what peer group they were looking at. The whole system is unlimited, so you have unlimited users, unlimited peer groups. You have commentary you can add here. And the other two features are the ones are the tools. So if you looked into education and say we just wanted them at this level, you could go through, pick your size. So you're 833 students for the year that we're in. So you want to bring this down into something that's more in your neighborhood. So even still, because it's all the school districts. So now we can go in and we can say, okay, let's do it for 16 miles, or let's do it, say, a little much. So within 23 miles. So now we have 12 other school districts. When you click next, it's going to give you what you guys spend for each of these buckets and what your peers, based on the parameters we just had. And at the very end, it will give you your peer average and your state average. So you can see how you're doing not only to these, but as the whole state. And if you prefer, you can do it by per pupil or a percent of your total funding or expenses. And these will drop out into Excel, and they'll drop into their own column. So if you needed to do an analysis, or if you wanted to save it for a presentation, you can just export it to Excel. If you happen to find a really nice peer group here, you can also save your peer list right here. And then you can use it. And again, if you're doing just back office type stuff, we're trying to figure out something, don't put it available to the public. You don't have to have any. You can just have the ClearGov one there. And then as you go back again and you come in and you go, well, that's nice, but you wanted to look at something else, say pupil services, or as you drill down into all of these, if you report it back to the state, it will then go in, so we could come in and say, look at where we're getting our money from, and it saves all of your parameters. So that's a nice way to go back and forth, and once you have a group of schools that you'd like to compare to, you can flip back and forth. And as you'll see, I'll scroll down a little bit, you can filter off of any of this information. So depending on what you're looking at, you can build a filter to get what you need. The other app that we have that will visualize, this is all the school districts in New York. And you guys are in red. Haldane is right here. I can't even find it. And what happens is you can now go and change parameters because, again, it's pulling all the school districts. So we're going to go back and we're going to say, all right, we don't want to compare to some that large. We can pull them up. We can then hit the radius again. And what's going to happen now is it's going to remove everyone else. So now we can see there's Haldane. We can put them in at a bar. So here's your funding sources, your total funding. If you wanted to look at it by what you're getting in taxes, and I would imagine revenues from other governments, it will totally update this information. You could flip over to spending and see what your total expenses are compared to that group. You could then look at education at that group. And you can also look at in a bell curve. So build what you need, set up your parameters, and this one it looks short, but we actually have all the same filters that we had in your benchmarking. So what we've done is we've tried to build a platform that helps your community know what's going on, as well as giving you guys some back office tools so that if you want to justify, we've had a community around us here in Massachusetts that actually got to hire a math teacher because they could prove that our math scores aren't that good. And then when we looked at the spending, it wasn't as comparable to the, surrounding towns that they wanted to, have the similar results on their testing. So all of this is set up. There's really no maintenance. Dr. Bowers can use it. Anyone on our team can use it. And it's just state-provided data. So you can flip between years. It will update as far back as, it will go. But the information is here. There's no maintenance. When the reports are published by NYSED and the Financial Controller's Office, we grab the information. If there's reports in Massachusetts, we submit end-of-year reports and to our Department of Education. And we can now grab those and upload them so that you could be actually looking at 2017, even though the state data wouldn't be available because they have to get it all from all the school districts and they don't release it until they have everyone. So we can then add 2017, like within a week of you sending it to us. We just put it through a process, get your data in. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, what is the fee for this service?
So this is available by pricing tiers, and the tiers are pretty much based on your student population. So we have micro, small, medium, and large. So, the Haldane school district was in our small, but, it all depends on it was in the micro. So you've got the lowest tiered pricing. And I'm not sure if you guys are the BOCES deal. We are BOCES certified, so that we have some towns that are doing it that are getting like a 67% rebate based on the BOCES. So we'll sign the contract through the BOCES, and then you'll pay the discounted price to them.
And Brenda, we are also a beta site, so we have a 50% discount.
Oh, yes, you did, yes. But, so if you're, a micro is your students are up to 1,000, it's 3,500. If you're small, it goes to 3,000 students, and it goes to 5,500. Our large ones, if you had 15,000 students, it would be $10,000. So that's about the range. So all depends on where your student population is.
We're paying a little over two, like 2,300.
So actually, I think my questions are more I love data, right? I actually know how to get every single piece of this data myself for free, but it's certainly not as accessible like that. So I'm curious. So we might want to finish with our questions for ClearGov and then have a conversation ourselves here about it. So I'll stop. I'll hold on to my questions.
So then does it just
okay?
Does it just
if you guys are
So other people have questions though.
Okay, go ahead.
So when people want to access this, do they go to ClearGov or do they go to Haldane and click through to you?
It will be on the website.
On our website.
If this is what we choose to do.
If Haldane put a link on their website, you could link right over to it. But if someone went, so say I'm just a citizen, you go to cleargov.com, and then you could go through school districts. But all they would have to do is type in the school, and then they'd be at this. They don't. I'm an admin, but they wouldn't see the admin button up here. That will not be there. So, and then the other thing is, if there are other school districts sitting in the room, want to see your page and it's not live, you can ask Dr. Bowers for my email address, and we do free trials. We could set you up for 2 weeks just to actually look around, and you get to do the front end and the back end.
Would you be able to create, if we wanted to create something that we thought was unique or we wanted to highlight in the district, where we gave you the data, where you could then put it into this platform? Like, for example, like, let's say I wanted to have on there the % of students that participate in an athletic team. I'm just throwing it out there as an example. And I said to you, okay, I got, 30 out of 60 ninth graders, 40 out of 70 10th graders, and then, make a chart so that the public can see that. Could you do that?
Yes. So what we're doing as we're rolling out to different states is we're in the process of developing custom panels. So maybe when someone clicks through to see more details, there'd be a panel here for who participates in sports. As long as you give us the data, the main thing to understand is you're not going to be able to benchmark because we won't have data for anyone but your school. But if you wanted to just share that information and you had the numbers, we could definitely build, when we get our custom panels in, there would just be one in here for you guys that had that information. If we could get it for the whole state, because we've had some other states that say, hey, this data is available, but we're not seeing it. And they tell us where to go get it. We get it and we bring it in. That's how we built some of our filters and things like that. We can definitely help you out.
I'm just thinking about like specific for us to highlight, if we wanted to highlight specific aspects of the school, % of students taking an AP, % of students taking an AP class, or just whatever it is. I mean, but not looking to necessarily compare to other school districts, but to kind of highlight more so to the district.
Right. So, and that's where it would drop in. We would build custom panels right in here. And then, like you said, so there's nothing here. This is strictly just you guys, so we could drop in one under here. And if we build a custom panel, what it would do is we would build it and say, here's your y-axis, here's your x-axis, here's what it is. You feed us the data, and annually you send us the data or whatever. I mean, once we have it built, bringing in the data is nothing. So, yes, we could absolutely do that. I mean, even if you wanted, we could have right here next to it, have it be what %, your 10th graders are in AP classes, 11th graders, 12th graders. And my screen share is going to drop in a minute, but I think we can do it without the screen share. So any other questions?
So that cost that you said before, that's the initial setup, and then there's a maintenance fee every year?
Or that's the annual
What it is, it's just an annual subscription fee. So whatever it is, then it's every year.
That's the same
We
amount
pay
every
that.
year, even though after the first year, it's just really pulling numbers from somewhere, right?
Yeah, it's just, well, in every year we'll be adding to it. We'll be making upgrades. We never, we don't charge for training. We don't charge for users. You could add as many users as you want. And as we add features, we don't roll out features, but this version has it. Once we improve it, we approve it across the board. Everyone gets it. So, you pretty much lock in, at that price, and it renews. And we don't, it's built into most contracts that we can't even charge you more than 10% than we did before. But right now we're renewing, other than like beta discounts and stuff like that. But we can certainly, if you went through your BOCES, you could definitely save a lot of money.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks very much.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Forgot to ask you, Jen,
Do you have
if you had a
questions for
question.
her?
No, I don't have questions for her. I mean, I have questions for us.
Yeah, okay. So, A lot of this data is publicly available, as she stated in her comment. Is there really a benefit into having it in one spot and having to pay for it? To me, I don't see the added value, but I don't know, that's my opinion.
Well, so, I mean, I'd actually be interested in hearing, like, Tony, I know you're involved in, like, thinking about the data that the district has, and Dr. Bowers, you are too, and so, what do you all think it would bring? Like, do you think, what are the utilities that you think it would bring?
Well, I can tell you that this is something that's just coming into New York State, and this was, I think the majority of their clients were in Massachusetts, and so it's something that's coming in. I know that there are a number of districts in the area that are considering using this, so this information is available. So if people want to go on and learn about Haldane and learn about what the district has to offer compared to others, if they're choosing to buy a house or some other situation, that's available. And this is something that is this is something now that we can use if it's something the district chooses to. Right. So I guess the question is, as we're redeveloping our website, is do you have any interest in this? And if you do, then we can continue to go forward. If not, then we won't.
I mean, Putnam Northern, Westchester.
Talk about, like, what you think the benefit would be for us as a school. I mean, it is interesting, I think, for real estate agents to have this information. Maybe for the town to have this information in terms of, like, selling the town. But why do we want this information? Can you talk about, like, how it's beneficial to the school?
Well, I know that what has happened in other schools is they have, like, transparency centers where it's just a place for all the information that the district has to offer is available for people who want to look at the district. And so if it's something that the district feels is beneficial, then it's worth it. If it's not, then it's not.
So Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES actually every year puts out a brochure with very similar information to what was presented here. So all of this information, again, is readily available, free of charge. I'm not sure what the added benefit would be to pay for it.
I wanted to hear from Tony too.
Or Tony.
Well, if we use it, well, the price was a big deal. Okay, so the price was very reasonable. If it's used in a way to kind of get it sent out to the public, it's a good PR thing. Like, perfect example, it's like New York City. See, this is my schools. They in New York City, they do this for every school in New York City. They just released last week's. But like, if you go onto the website, I can get this for the last 3 years. Okay, this is all
the same company.
No, different company.
The city does.
But the point is that they make, like, this, all the information in here, same thing. There's nothing on here in this report card that somebody couldn't go and get themselves.
But it's nice because it's all
But
right
we
there.
have
It's
a
all right.
report card on our website
No, but I'm
that
saying
we've
no,
built
but
ourselves.
but they're not going to go. Like, the point is that it's user friendly. Okay, this is all public data. I'm not necessarily either. I'm just saying that's the logic behind it. So for the price, to kind of get it out there, and the fact that it goes back so far that you can access it. It's a public relations thing, basically. See, like all this. See how nice see the colors and the big numbers.
But
okay?
you also have to
So,
be careful with data that's presented because data is tricky, and it can be perceived, in my
absolutely.
opinion, very differently than what the numbers are actually showing. Go
Absolutely.
ahead.
A lot of the stuff, I can go through this and say to you, I can't believe they put that in there because that's not accurate. Okay, so that's true. That's why I asked about the custom. So we can kind of highlight things specifically, like number of students taking AP exams, number of students getting at least a 3 on one exam, things like that. That's not necessarily public. That we could put in there. So I thought this was interesting. Once you said the price, if she would have said, $8,000, would have been okay. But for $1,500, it might be something that's worth looking at.
23.
What was it?
We could get
Sounds
the
like
Well, she said a
2,300.
50% discount.
I think that included
That
the
is a
discount.
And then, but we are not, I mean, it could be run through BOCES, so then it would be another third off of that. So it's kind of close to what you're saying.
So, like Evan said, for those familiar with the New York City Department of Ed version of this, which is pervasive throughout the entire school system, largest school system in the United States. So for a parent that wants to explore New York City schools and explore different neighborhoods, there's actually 3 key data points, 3 key reports for each school in New York City. And for that reason, it can be very easy to choose an apartment or look around different boroughs. I guess the reservation that I have about this system is that there's not that many schools signed up yet. But what I do like about it is that they compare us throughout Putnam, North, Westchester, BOCES, which is nice for folks who are thinking about moving out of the city and sort of comparing districts in Putnam and North Westchester. And another thing I like about it is that you have the ability to, as a district, choose data points, like you said, Evan. Like, are there things that we want to promote of our own district? Because obviously New York City schools can't control what they report through that. And it's changed quite a bit through the Bloomberg administration, now the de Blasio administration. The data points that they control and that they present very carefully in a statistical way are done so to achieve their own aims. So if it's clear gov and it's, pretty clear data, and people who go to the website can manipulate it on their own and compare things in certain ways, that gives them a little bit more power. We can promote things on our own. So it seems like a nice way to present the school district in a balanced and transparent way, with some caveats being that it's not as broad, perhaps. And I guess the onus would be on us to make sure that their data is kept current and accurate. Yeah.
So that's the selling point, that you, at one touch, you can compare it to other schools. Because if you just type it, because I just typed in Haldane graduation rate, you get 8,000 sites, and you can look it up, and they all look like this. But that's the selling point. You can compare it to other schools in one spot.
And the longitudinal view.
Right.
Right, which is another thing New York City schools do, but I think usually just year to year, maybe get 2 or 3 years of data. I think with ClearGov, you got 3 or 4, as I recall. 5.
Yeah, and, and it's financial, it's also accountability data, it's, the relationship with the state. So, there's really no, however you choose to go. I wanted you to be aware that this was now available, and if it's something that you want to have available to our constituents, that's fine, and if not, that's fine too.
Do they have competitors at this point that
No,
offer similar?
no.
No, this
This
is it.
is something that's just coming
This is
in,
the
yeah.
beginning.
Jen, did you have a question?
No, I don't know. I'm not too moved by it all. I don't know why. I don't feel like it's. I don't know. I guess I'm thinking like it's nice. Why not? But I also feel like we can't just always say yes to everything. That's like, why not? It's a couple $1,000.
Right.
At the end of the day, then all of a sudden we spend lots of couple of thousands of dollars. So I don't know. I'm not that moved by it, but I could be swayed. But I think that if we already have the, I believe BOCES does some sort of comparison chart. So if that's interesting to us, we could put that on our website, right? Don't they already do? They already compare the schools and the.
They put it in a booklet, but I'm sure we get the booklet every year, annually.
It's actually Westchester Putnam School Board Association that
Okay, so
produces
it's
that
the
booklet.
Westchester Putnam School Board Association that produces the booklet. I kept saying Putnam, Northern Westchester, BOCES. We get that booklet every year. It's white with green and blue writing.
Maybe we could just find a way to put that on the website
Right.
as like a place to start, and see if there's a lot of interest, if people have a lot of questions, if people want more information, then maybe readdress it.
And I think we need to find out the real price. There was the price minus the 50%, minus the 67%, minus the, And if they're gonna, I don't know. I think if it's a minimal cost, then we might as well jump in and play with it for a short period of time until we're sure that this is really gonna be
useful to people, useful to our property values, to people coming in, looking at us, comparing us to other schools. But if it's going to continue to go up and we don't have that 67% discount or whatever, I think we need to make sure it's really that these taxpayers are getting their money back and increasing the value of their property.
So we can also wait too. I mean, if you want to see if this is something that becomes a regular part of most our district information, we could always wait, and in a few years you could try it again.
That's probably a good idea. Also, my concern was, and I raised this again, data gets interpreted differently by everybody. And in my opinion, you have to be very careful when you're putting numbers out there for the community to view, and maybe someone doesn't exactly understand it, and then it gets viewed negatively. We had a situation with the exam scores as they were presented, and to me, I'd rather have discussion and conversation about it rather than just posting these numbers up there without context.
But the person that's looking at it is the one manipulating it. We have no control over that. They can manipulate it and say that was the whole thing. They can manipulate it and say, I want to compare 2015, 16, 17 for fifth grade, whatever. They can move all of those parameters. So, and that's what they're selling.
What I think I hear Diana saying is that there is an idea, there may be a movement among other districts nearby going to do this, right? Like an interest in doing this. And I think I would be more comfortable waiting to see if the extent to which there is a demand for it. Because I think NYSED has actually done a really pretty good job at making it pretty easy to they have a really nice interface for their data system. And so, report cards? Yeah, I mean, because you can build your own report card, you can break it down by school, you can break it down by district. So, and the reason why I asked the particular.
Go back to Megan a little bit about
really?
that one as well. I don't know if she mentioned it in her presentation. I don't think she did about
Jen?
I have no idea what we're supposed to be doing.
About what, Jen?
I said maybe we should circle back to Megan a little bit about this and see if there's a plan for putting in comparison charts or statistics or.
Yeah, and I don't know if we've had that conversation. Yeah, I mean, this would, if we were to go this direction, then it could just be a link, and it wouldn't necessarily be embedded, but it doesn't mean that it can't be embedded as well. So that's an option.
Okay. So is the board saying we should hold off for the moment? I'm sure Diana, Dr. Bowers needs to get back to ClearGov.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this goes back to my original question, to the extent, so I feel like right now in New York that they're actually, when it comes to this kind of data, because it's publicly available and because NYSED's done I think actually a really pretty good job at trying to make its data site user-friendly, like in terms of transparency for the community, I feel like we're covered. However, to the extent that there began to be, like if there were really very specific requests for it, even from people like like from Tony or from the other administrators, that a tool like this would be helpful, yeah, I'd certainly be willing, because the data visualization is actually really very nice. I mean, that's the kind of thing to do to really be able to analyze data quickly like that. If you don't pull those data systems in yourself, and if you don't already know how to use one of those like infographic sort of applications, it does take time. Like, I mean, and the amount that could cover a person's time it would take to learn how to do it. But until then, I feel pretty good with what we have.
Okay.
How did this presentation come about? Like, is this something that you were interested in, or did they contact you asking if they can present to us?
They contacted us and explained that they were coming into the area And so this is something that I wanted to offer as a possibility while we were redeveloping our website. And if it's something they have an interest in, that's great. If not, that's great too.
But it does, we do want to think about how, we do want to think about how to use data. I just don't think this is, for me right now, this is not the data that I'm most interested in seeing.
Great. Okay, so you'll let them know we'll pass for the moment.
We're not, this is no big disappointment to you? No. You're a data person, right? I mean, that's your job, and so I wanted to make sure that there was,
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about the cartographer's dilemma and trying to figure out which data is most pertinent to present at any given time, and I get lost in that discussion with myself.
Yeah.
You know, to articulate to another adult is difficult enough, but having spent some time with it and having spent a long time in New York City with that kind of data, it's a double-edged sword. So you have to be very careful about what you want to present, how you want to present it, because numbers do not speak for themselves. You have to speak for the numbers. So it would take, I think, a long time and a lot of concentration and effort to try to get it to exactly the way we wanted it to achieve the purpose that we wanted to achieve.
And actually, I trust Tony and Diana to do that more than I trust, like anybody
Because
off
you're
the
living
street.
and breathing the information here versus being pulled off.
However you want to do it.
Okay. So we're going to move into our information reports at this time, and we'll start off with our student representative, May McGrath.
Thank you. So I'm guessing you want me to talk about just general stuff that's been going on in the high school?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm not sure if we touched on this in the last Board of Ed meeting, but the Instant Decision Day passed pretty recently. But I know a lot of seniors took advantage of that because representatives from different colleges come in and students just sit down and give them their resumes, test scores, transcripts, and they tell them right then if they're into the school or not. So I think that's always a really beneficial thing, and I know a lot of people who took advantage of that this year. Also, the literary magazine, and not just the literary magazine, but it's mainly that club that participates in it, is preparing for the Poetry Out Loud competition, where different students in the high school pick a piece of poetry and read it in its tournament style at different places, and it goes like statewide, I believe is the highest level. It might go further. And I know the group's been working with local poets, I think Jeff McDaniels in particular, to work on poetry speaking skills and stuff like that. Also, I believe the PTA had a meeting recently about different clubs that the high school has, and I know 2 students from my grade spoke at the meeting to talk to parents of incoming high school students about different clubs that the high school has to offer. I know groups like Peer Mentoring talk to the current 8th graders about that, but I think it's good that it's also being directed at the parents as well, as sometimes students might not be passing that information along. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, May.
You're welcome.
This is great information, and this is exactly why having a student representative on the board really helps us see things beyond our daily duties, and hearing information like that is beneficial for us to know what's going on with the student body. So thank you.
Because I saw that picture of the kids, but I actually didn't know exactly what. I don't think they had that instant decision.
I think it was the year after.
Right?
I think Catherine's year was the
'Cause
first year that did it, yeah.
So
Yeah, I
that's-
think they had it last year too, but
So I saw that, but I was like, wow, like all those kids found out from their colleges at the same time. I didn't know how that happened. Well, because it's not even early decision applications.
right.
are even in
It's
yet.
it's a different round of.
Right. But now, are those binding decisions, or they're just
No,
decisions?
no,
That
yeah,
gives
it's just decisions.
That's actually really what a nice thing for students who have some anxiety going into this process to know, like that there are. That there are local schools that want them, and I mean, because the whole thing becomes this so big, and the idea of just like giving this really solid message, like, there's lots of good schools around here, and you can get, it just takes so much of that anxiety away, and it's not for every kid, but I think that's great. That's very exciting.
Absolutely. Thank you, May.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Wallach.
grab the microphone and use it this way. I'm assuming it's on. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Jen, who I can't see, but who is here via her iPad this evening. We'll turn Jen around. Hi, Jen. How are you? I'll wave too. No, I was hiding out of the camera view earlier this evening. So hopefully all of you realize by now that when I submit a written board report, I give you a list of about 5 bullet points of different things that happen at the elementary school, but I usually pick one to focus on when I speak with you in person. And this month I want to talk about our student council elections. Obviously our elections happened on November 7th, which was election day, but a lot had to lead up to that. Mrs. Kristen Spooner, who is one of our excellent 5th grade teachers, is the teacher that is the advisor to our student council, and she and I together, we created a process. So students, to be able to run for student council, had to get signatures to be on the ballot, just like in a real election. Different positions required a different number of signatures from eligible voters, which meant 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. And then once people were accepted to be on the ballot, they were able to put up their advertising signs. Just like we saw before the real election 2 weeks ago, the village of Cold Spring was covered with advertising signs on yard signs from every candidate for every race. Well, the halls of Haldane Elementary School were too for about a week and a half. Students found every possible place where they could put their advertising, some high, some low, some directly above a water fountain, thinking that would get it seen. Some of the signs were very creative. Some of the signs were somewhat professionally done with obviously some parent assistance. The day before the election, we had a candidates forum. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders were invited into the gym. All the candidates for all the positions, and there's one representative from each class, grades 3, 4, and 5, and then there's 4 officers, president, vice president, secretary, treasurer. Each candidate was invited to speak for a couple of minutes. The candidates worked very hard on their speeches. Some of them dressed up, and boys in shirts and ties is not something we usually see at the elementary level on a daily basis. The audience had clipboards with rubrics that were given to them so they could rate the candidates. The children had all talked about it with their teachers beforehand, so they all knew exactly how the process was going to work, what to look for. They talked about, what can we believe, what can we not believe. I shared this at a PTA meeting last week, that we had one candidate who promised if he was elected, every classroom would have more fans and air conditioners. And the other children in the audience realized that wasn't something that he had the power to do, and there was just a little bit of snickering in the audience, which, I feel badly for the candidate that said that, but I feel really good for our students who understood the process well enough to understand that that's a great big thing to say you're going to provide, but that person had no power to be able to enact that if he was elected. So obviously we had our election on November 7th. Ballots were counted the same afternoon. The results were announced with our morning announcements the next morning on Wednesday the 8th. And those children had their first meeting on Wednesday the 8th. They'll be meeting during their recess and lunchtime periodically as needed, and hopefully they'll be working to make some improvements in our school and make our great school even a better and more fun place to be in. So that's what I wanted to share tonight. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Show is the only other
And then
administrator.
I'll share where everybody else is, since it's a Monday night.
So just really quickly, I want to applaud Mr. Wallach for further developing that process. Among the many items on my wish list for public schooling is better civic engagement. So well done, sir. Just a couple things, one that's on the board report, one not. We have begun the projections process for the Committee on Special Ed, which has to basically be all year long. I started earlier this year so that we could really engage in wrapping our programs around the students or adapting our programs to the students and not force it the other way around. The other point that I want to bring up is that we are hiring, in the hiring process for a full-time special education teacher to replace Ms. Jody Rowland, who is retiring from the middle school, high school. In January, yeah.
Is Jen
you.
back on?
Not quite yet.
Because it rang through here as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, she is now. She's not. It's not. Oh. How do I answer? No, actually.
So that's my personal so it's ringing on here and there as well, so you can just pick up. Okay.
Okay, so, just so you know where all the other administrators are tonight, Mrs. Silky has her doctoral cohort on Monday nights, and since this is a Monday meeting instead of a Tuesday meeting, we've lost quite a few people. Mrs. Sniffen is out of town at the moment, and Mr. Solomon had his athletic directors meeting tonight. So having the meeting on Monday just kind of deflated the number of people that could actually be here to report.
Well, that's okay, because we have their formal reports here anyway, so thank you. Okay, any communication from the public? Our public's dwindling. Okay, we'll move into... Oh, sorry, yes, feel free to. Sorry, I didn't dismiss you formally, but have a good evening.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving as well.
Sleep really quickly. We'll be back here cracking on, making breakfast for our faculty and staff.
Okay.
Would you like to tell us anything?
Sorry, Anne, that wasn't intentional. We're using a new space here, and if it doesn't work out, what do you guys think? Are you comfortable with this?
I like it up here.
I like it here too.
Okay.
Although I think we could move the tables in the other room, so there's not as many tables. Yeah, we could just move what we're not using. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
I like it in here. I like it.
And how's the video? Is the
Actually,
video
these
easy
chairs are
enough?
comfortable.
And the setup is easy enough?
Yeah.
I mean, you could put one more table there and then
Sure.
everybody.
You can probably push the two tables in a little bit, push, open it in, so you're a little
Oh,
closer.
and Jen's
Yeah,
Right, Jen's not here.
table like this, and you're good.
we're good. Okay, so this is where we could say our workshop meetings will be from now on. And we'll continue to conduct the business meetings downstairs for time being. Okay, great. Moving on to consent agenda financial. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any questions or discussion? No? Jen? You good? Okay. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Consent agenda personnel, may I have a motion?
Motion?
Second.
Okay, any discussion, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, we received a correspondence from Mr. Dan Hughes. It's not often that we get these lovely thank yous, so I'm going to highlight. We had the perfect. Yeah. Yeah. His letter really highlights the fabric of this community, and I want to thank Dan again. We had the opportunity yesterday, as Dr. Bowers mentioned, we had a ribbon cutting for the ceremony down for the concession stand, and he really highlighted the essence of the fabric of this community, where everybody just comes together and gets things done. So Dan was kind of the project manager, I call him, in the process. So a shout out to him, but a shout out to all those really involved in building a great building down there. So,
Can we put the picture on the website? The picture of Dan cutting the ribbon?
okay. Unfinished business. At the last meeting, we discussed that we would keep the superintendent search under unfinished business, but today we had a presentation from Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES, and that basically was the update for this evening's board meeting. And as we progress, we'll learn a little more each time. I guess the next step is going to be the forums. So as the forums develop, we'll continue to provide feedback and information to the community. Okay. Any additional communication? No? Okay. With that said, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, Jen.
Happy
Happy
Thanksgiving,
Thanksgiving.
Jen.